Hi, I'm Casey Hartnett. I play Allie in Terrifier 2, and you're watching Pop Culture with Pat.
Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. So I am so excited to be talking to today's special guest on the show, Casey Hartnett. She plays Allie in Terrifier 2, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen already at this point. So excited to be talking to you, Casey. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Good to be
You're
here.
you're very welcome. So to start things off before we get into all things Terrifier, I always want to ask first-time guests just a little bit about yourself. So can you just talk about like, what was like the inspiration behind you becoming an actor in the first place?
Yeah, I think, I started dancing when I was 3. My parents put me in ballet classes when I was 3. And so I think from there, I loved it and I kept dancing and I kept performing. And so those were my first times on a stage ever for those recitals. And I just kept adding more and more dance classes, started competing. And then I really started doing theater when I was 11. And I had wanted to try theater, and my parents finally let me try theater. So, but I really think I fell in love with the idea of acting after watching Harriet the Spy.
Yep.
Um, yeah, that movie, I think I was 5, and I just absolutely loved it. Loved Michelle Trachtenberg, loved Harriet, like loved her character. And I started writing after that and started writing my own scripts and casting my friends. And so then I was like, I want to take theater classes. So yeah, I eventually chose theater over dance.
That's always
The
really
rest
cool
is
to
history.
hear people like, if there was like, because sometimes like I've talked to people where it's just kind of like, no, like I was just like interested in general, but it's always cool when you have like there was like a specific movie or something that like really kind of sparked that interest. So yeah, Harriet the
Yeah.
Spy, man, I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but I
Mhm.
remember it coming out like when I was like a kid like as well. So that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. And then that you started writing, too, and now you're in this film called Terrifier 2, which is
Yeah.
far away from like a Harriet the Spy kind of like movie.
Very cool.
So how did you get involved with this project and like what was your audition process like for it?
Yeah, so my first audition, I think I taped 2 scenes from home for 2 different characters, and then I went in for a chemistry read with Lauren as Allie, and then from there, my third audition was another self-tape from home. It was a screaming scene, so I was like screaming, running away from Art, the clown, of course, and just so Damien could see where I would go with that. And then I only did it once because my neighbor came and knocked on my door and was like, just making sure you're okay. Wasn't sure if you were like getting murdered or having some like weird sex or something. And I was like, well, neither of those. Well, neither of those.
I was
But
gonna I was gonna say, like, is that like I can just picture like, yeah, you have like a neighbor or something, and they just hear you let out a blood curdling scream, and they're just like, "What the hell is going on?" So
yeah,
that's pretty funny.
yeah, that was really funny. But also good of my neighbor to come check on me.
Yeah, no,
I
definitely. I
did
mean, that's
appreciate that.
that is nice. And did they know like did your neighbor know that you were like an actor like before that? If not, they know afterwards.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think we had really met. Because that neighbor, they're a comedian themselves. And so
Oh,
I
okay.
think we found that out at the same time and we're like, oh, cool.
That's
Um,
pretty funny.
yeah, but yeah, so they didn't know. And I was like, I'm an actor, I'm just acting. I
Talk
promise.
about talk about a nice like introduction, like first time. It's like, are you okay? Oh yeah, I'm just an
Yeah,
actor. Don't worry about it.
yeah. And
Yep.
yeah, so I only did the scene once because I didn't want to bother my neighbors again.
That's fair. Now you mentioned, and that was actually something I was going to ask you too, that you like auditioned initially for like a couple characters. Like who were the other characters?
Yeah, I I auditioned for like it was well, I auditioned for Sienna, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like weird to just be like, I auditioned for, but like it was like the friends, sometimes they
Yeah.
do that where they're like, okay, let's see like which of these 3 characters you fit. And the
Yeah.
biggest compliment is when you do get to audition for 2.
Yeah.
So like that is honestly the biggest gift because that just means that you can fit multiple parts and hopefully they'll cast you for one of those.
Yeah, no, it's yeah.
Yeah,
I always like to ask about that because I
yeah.
find that happens quite a bit. It's like you
Mhm.
won't necessarily go in for one role. You might audition for like a number of different characters, and then they kind of see like, okay, maybe you fit better with like this particular character. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if they liked you for multiple, that's always awesome too.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, so that was, it's always nice. It's always nice for them to be like, okay, let's try this, and to give you more options. But then it was really fun to read with Lauren in person. And he gave me, so we did a scene together, and then he gave me a cold read of the trick-or-treating scene. So that was fun.
I can
But yeah.
I can imagine. Now, had you going into this, had you seen the original Terrifier film, or were you kind of going into this like brand new?
I was pretty brand new to the Terrifier world. I hadn't seen the first movie yet, so I wasn't too. I knew it was a slasher movie, but I really wasn't. I just hadn't seen it, so
Yeah.
I watched the trailer and I kind of looked up, like did a little bit of research about the films before I auditioned, just to get a sense of what I was auditioning for,
Yeah.
to know what kind of horror film it was, slasher movie, all that fun stuff. But I didn't watch the film till after I auditioned, just so that I didn't get too in my head about the performances and things like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say sometimes it's almost better, or it depends on the person, but I feel like it's almost better yeah to go in not having like a preconceived notion of like what you're supposed to
Yeah.
do and just kind of create
Yeah.
your own performance.
I didn't want to accidentally try to act like another actor.
Yeah.
Um, because knowing that the director liked those actors and like, all the actors from the first movie, of course,
Yeah.
you just want to be able to bring your own thing to it without thinking like, oh, I have to do this like this other person, because that's not true. You have
Yeah.
to bring your own thing to it. And that's the gift of being your own actor.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
so you get the script for Terrifier 2 and you read, you get to the point where you read Allie's death scene.
Mhm.
What was your reaction when you first initially read that?
So but he warned me about what would happen, but I guess reading it obviously goes into a bit more detail when you're actually reading it moment by moment. So I think it was, I mean, for me, it was just sort of like a WTF moment.
I can
I
imagine.
was like, what? This is wild. This is crazy. But I was also excited, it made me, I was like, yeah, let's try it. Let's go for it. Let's do this crazy scene.
And you had never, like up to this point, like in your career, had you done anything like remotely close to like this, a scene like this?
No, no, definitely not.
No.
So that was
So
fun.
but you were, it sounds like so you were down to, down to do it. That I mean, that's it must have been, yeah, I can't even imagine just like was when you were reading it, did what was like on the pages, is that pretty much exactly like what we got like on the film? Was there anything different to the scene?
I it's pretty close. I think he added the eye slash later after COVID. I think that was something because I think he might have asked me. He said, "What is like?" He's like, "What is something that just like grosses you out or makes you cringe?" And I was like, "My kneecaps and my eyeballs. Like, don't touch my eyes and I don't like, for some reason, I don't like when people touch my kneecap, like, because your kneecap can like, it's like not really attached.
Yeah.
It's like weird.
No, that's
Kneecaps are
fair.
so weird. So I don't know. I get really weirded out by that, by both of those. And so he's like, he added the eye slash. And
So
I was,
he was like, we're already gonna torture Allie enough, but now we're just gonna go ahead and add this, this eyeball scene to the mix, like as well.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
like one of the things about Art the Clown that compared to some of the other slasher horror icons that we've got over the years. And I was
Yeah.
talking to Leah about this too, was just saying that, if these characters existed in the real world, I would almost rather be taken out by a Michael Myers, a Jason, or a Freddy, because at least with them, you're gonna probably go pretty quick. When
Hmm.
it comes to Art the Clown, like he doesn't just take you out. It's like he just keeps going and going and going. And it's just like something about that is just like that definitely makes me feel a little like weird, which I'm sure like most people it probably does, but it's just like, yeah, just if those guys existed, I do not want to run into Art the Clown like, in person.
I think it'd be yeah, I do think that if those, if we were really living in the slasher world, that he would be the worst for
Yeah.
sure. Hmm.
Now, Allie's death. So it's for me. I mean, there's a lot of crazy shit in Terrifier 2, like to say the least. But your character's death is probably the most intense scene in the film.
Hmm.
So for you as an actor going into the scene, how do you prepare yourself both physically and mentally to film something like this?
Um, it's a good question, and I sometimes I think I kind of black out when I do these things, but to especially like the very emotional part, like scenes, sometimes afterwards I'm like, I have no idea what I just did, but hopefully that worked.
Yeah,
Um, but I mean, in preparation for that, I mean, it's a lot of, I mean, to emotionally prepare for that, you're just imagining, um, something equivalent to someone chasing you and killing you.
yeah,
And just like that most horrific thing that you can possibly think of to get to that emotional state. Um, so that you can live truthfully through those emotions, of course. So for me, that was it. But it's also it was interesting though too, because the scene is it did become very physical. It became more physical when it kind of got fleshed out a bit more during the pandemic. Um, and so I we just kind of like went for it.
yeah,
It was sort of just one of those things where it was like, um, I don't know, I just sort of went with it. It was like we're gonna throw you on the bed and then you're gonna crawl, we're gonna get you crawling and then we'll grab you and throw you back on the bed and then you'll crawl again. And so it's just and we of course like did all worked all of those moments because it's film, it's not all in one take. So we worked all those moments separately and like in between each day or in between each take, like whenever in between each prosthetic appliance. So we were really working all of that separately. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of screaming and a lot of just thinking about the fact that you don't want to die, which is really
yeah.
creepy.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I imagine just like I mean like the prosthetics and like you said screaming and stuff like that. Like at the end of the day, I imagine you probably probably were able to go to bed. You were probably I imagine like physically like drained, just like screaming and running around and stuff like that.
Very ready to sleep after that.
How
Very much.
long for like the whole scene? Because I'm sure it was probably broken down into like many different like cuts. How long did it take like in total to film like the whole scene? Do you remember?
Well, it took 5 days.
5 days. So like
So
almost a full week basically.
yeah, so we were on set we were filming for 5 days. The first day, I mean, we started the chase up the stairs before the pandemic, and then did the actual kill in 5 days. And it started with like maybe the eye slash and the scalping. It's like weird to say, but I think we started with both of those, and then the next day added more prosthetics, added the bed, did some of the slashes on the bed, and then yeah, so and then by the end of it, it was really just my puppet or this life cast of me that Damien had constructed for the very end of the scene, and then we filmed like my eyeball to CGI my eyeball onto the face
The
of this
face.
puppet. So yeah, so it was just the last day was the easiest for me,
Yeah, I'm sure.
me at least. But it was fun. Yeah, it was fun. It was interesting to that whole process was just wild.
As far as like the what was for you like what was the most like challenging aspect of doing that whole scene? Because again, a lot of moving parts, the prosthetics and different things like that. What was the most challenging thing for you for that scene?
The most challenging was, mm, it was probably, I mean, it was so cold. We filmed it in December and we didn't have real heat. We had heaters that we had to turn off during the scene, of course, because of the sound. And so that was probably the hardest part, maybe that it was just so cold. But I think, I mean, because of my adrenaline and just like wanting to do the scene well, you kind of forget about it and you just
Yeah.
brush it off. But I mean, that I'm trying to think of I don't know, like the some of the prosthetics were I don't know if they were that. I mean, we did it very efficiently, I feel like. So I'm like, I feel like
Yeah, I
it's
was gonna say,
it's challenging, but it's everything seemed to work. I'm trying to remember if we had any like issues with blood splattering where it wasn't supposed to, or like things like that with I remember when he scalped me, there was just like blood everywhere.
yeah,
And I was like, oh.
do you like remember like how much blood was like used like in just like your scene like alone?
I don't remember the exact number.
Yeah,
I
but a
can't
lot.
remember exactly how much was used, but definitely a lot. Yeah, I have to ask Damien to clarify that. But
Yeah, I imagine it's quite a bit because it's like yeah,
yeah,
it's everywhere. So was
yeah.
it because I've talked to other people with like when they've been in like horror movies with like having blood on them and stuff like that. Was it kind of like sticky like having on you and just between that and like the prosthetics?
Yeah, it definitely was very sticky, very cold. And then having the prosthetics, I mean, I couldn't see out of one eye. And then I just had like goop all over me, was sticking to the carpet. Um, so it was, and I mean, the bed was also covered in blood. I think continuity was also a thing that we had to think about with the blood, because if all of a sudden there was like way more blood and we had to go back and like do something again, we had to hide that, or they had to hide that in the take, in the frame. But I yeah, that was one thing. And the bed was just covered in blood by that point. So it was kind of uncomfortable because it was just like soaked.
Yeah,
It was kind of uncomfortable to even be sitting on.
yeah, no, yeah, I can
Um,
totally understand that.
yeah, but I mean, yeah, it's all coming back to me.
And what as far as like the prosthetics and stuff like that, so what was because we talked a little bit about it. What was like the process of getting some of those like things on? How long did it like take to get some of those things on? And
Yeah. So of course, Damien had them all made by that point, and there's this glue that he uses to apply everything. And so it didn't take an extremely long time, but I mean, David and I combined were definitely in hair and makeup for a, a few hours.
hours.
A few
Yeah,
hours at least before we ever even went to set.
I
So
can imagine, especially like the longer the scene like went on,
uh,
as like he's going after your character. I'm sure like the more stuff that they had to add, it probably took a little bit longer
exactly.
too.
Yeah.
What was
So
it
you
like seeing like because you said you got like a cast of like your body for like the
Mhm.
end. What was it like getting like a cast done of you?
It was interesting. It was my first day ever. Well, not meeting Damien, but it was my first day before filming of doing anything related to the film, and so it was it's interesting because when you do the head, when anyone does a molding of someone's head, it's like you have to you have to like breathe,
Yeah,
but so like it's like all everywhere. And so he did have like a hole, like he did have like an opening for the mouth
yeah,
where you can breathe, but it's just very uncomfortable to have something over your face like that, over your entire face. Um, and then the life cast was the only thing with the life cast is that I was sitting in a position and Damien was like, okay, just make sure both of your just like sit like slumped over, like you will be slumped over, and make sure both of your legs are on the floor. And I was like, okay. And I was the way I was sitting, like my knee, because I had one leg bent, so my knee was a little off the floor, and I was like, "Oh crap," because I had to sit there for long enough, and then my legs started before it like started falling asleep, and then just started like hurting.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't hold it anymore. I don't know what to do. So it like that got to a point where I was just like, I was like, I should have listened to you and thought about, I need to put my knee on the ground. So in the future, if anyone ever does that, make sure
You're in a
you're,
comfortable position.
yes,
Yeah.
resting all parts on the floor. But yeah, and that was interesting, but that was my fault.
Hey,
I was
like you
like,
said, it was
whatever.
your first time doing it. So I mean, it's,
Yeah. But it was also the position that she would have been sitting in. So I was like, well, it's justified. I'll deal with it.
yeah, I mean, hey, it came out great. Like at the end
Yeah.
of the day, like once everyone saw, the scene and everything, it's definitely something that I don't think anyone who's seen the film is gonna forget. So, I
Mhm.
mean, you guys like great work, like yourself, like the special effects team, Damien, and everybody. So I'm sure in the moment it wasn't too comfortable, but it came out really well afterwards.
Yes, I agree. So it was all worth it for sure. Yeah.
And so with such an intense scene too, I imagine you and David had, some conversations like prior to and even while filming that scene. Can you just talk about like what the collaboration process was like between you and David throughout, that whole scene in the film?
Yeah. So I mean, we did work together to sort of like when we were blocking everything, like just like where he would, like just practicing all like the physical stuff and going over that and communicating that to each other was really important.
Yep.
Um, because also when he's like scalping me, there's a moment where he had to pull my hair a bit, so he had to make sure, that it was
Yeah.
everything was comfortable and nothing, nothing was hurting or anything like that. So we were just able to communicate all of that as we were blocking it out. So that was really nice, and just communicating what I think we were honestly both just like up for the challenge and up for anything, but yeah, the communication was there for sure to talk about all of that.
And it's
Mhm.
funny because I've heard from a number of you guys like on the cast now that I've heard David, he's like one of the nicest guys that you can meet and like work with. And so it's always just like kind of weird. It's like, you have like, you guys are actors, but like you have this guy who's playing this like psycho killer clown, person. And then he ends up like he's like one of the nicest people. So just like, did you guys like, was there any like goofing around or anything like that between like takes?
Oh yes, absolutely. We were joking most of the time. We were,
That's good though.
yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like you kind of have like you almost I feel like you kind of have to almost with something like this just to kind of like keep that fun like levity
right.
there so it's not all so like like serious.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was also just like, it was, yeah, I feel like everyone on the set too, or who was a part of that film, everyone was just having a good time. People were pranking each other, lots of jokes. It was just a good group of people, and I think you need that light-heartedness on a horror set so that
Yeah.
it's not so heavy all the time, because that would just be kind of uncomfortable. I
Yeah, yeah, no,
feel
totally.
like,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, and you can tell, I mean, just like the chemistry with everyone like on the film watching it that it seems like you guys definitely had a fun time.
yeah,
Uh
yeah.
so for you, Casey, you're officially part of a movie and a scene that I think is going to be talked about for years now. Has that reality set in for you yet? And just like, what are your thoughts on that?
Um, I don't know if it has set in. I feel, like there are things where I'm just like, why is this happening? Or why, like, I don't know. I think I'm trying to allow myself to take it all in
Hmm.
and to accept it all, and because I'm so used to doing indie films, but I'm so used to doing indie films that, they go to theaters for like a week and then a film festival or whatever it is, and just that's it. and you move on and you do the next thing. And so this has been a very pleasant, well, I don't know. I guess it has been a pleasant surprise. I wasn't sure what to expect. You never know
Yeah.
how a movie's going to do.
Yep.
So it's been nice, but yeah, it's settling, but I don't know if it's entirely settled.
Yeah, I'm sure it's been like, like we were talking a little bit before. I'm sure it's been kind of like all like a whirlwind since, the movies come out and just doing, different interviews and talking to different people and stuff like that. So but yeah, no, I think it's definitely gonna be one of those scenes, like years where people are gonna be like, yeah, you remember that, that kill scene in Terrifier 2? I mean, that's all that I see a lot of people, talking about like now. So, and I was so happy that this did get a theatrical release and that I was actually able to see it because I'm up in New Hampshire. We don't always necessarily like sometimes like
Right.
things will play in Boston or which isn't too far, but like New York and stuff like that.
Right.
And it actually came. I ended up going about a half an hour away from my house, and I was able to watch it. And
Mhm.
then I knew that it was really, really blowing up because, like, I think a week after I saw it there, it ended up popping up at a theater that's like 5-10 minutes like from my house. So, and like usually they don't get, some of these like indie films. So I was like, okay, like this film
Yeah.
was definitely, blowing up. And just like the fact that it's made what over $10 million now on like a $250,000 budget. So
Yeah. Yeah, I did notice that it I think it was near the third week that some smaller theaters started having it. And that it's just nice to see that. And well, smaller theaters and smaller, not in the big cities in the
yeah,
US. And that I think was really cool to see. So, and that surprised me again, of course. And they're just like, it just seems like the demand for the film was out there and people wanted to see it and were requesting it in certain theaters, and the theaters supported that.
yeah.
So,
Which always, I'm always about supporting theaters. It's like, I know some people they like streaming and streaming's great, but if I can support a film and if it's in theaters, like I'm always going to go to the theaters every day to support a movie. So, and I felt like this was one of those event type of films too, where like the theater that I went to the first time I saw it, it was pretty much like sold out. And I feel like it's one of those movies where it's like it's better watching it with a crowd because you get everyone's like emotions and stuff like that going.
yeah, totally. I feel that. I love it's a much better experience to watch a film on a big screen with other people.
Agreed.
Mhm.
And
Definitely.
so like not only just like the the box office success and everything, but you guys, so it's been a huge hit. You guys have gotten praise from Stephen King, from Mike Flanagan, which, two of my favorite people in the horror genre.
Yeah.
What's been, we've kind of, I guess, like been talking about it, but what's been the reaction for you personally? And what's the craziest thing that you've seen from like fans or anyone like up to this point regarding the film?
Um, yeah, I mean that's been exciting to know that other, you know, not just fans, but other people who may not have seen the first movie, other industry people are actually watching it and enjoying it, like other filmmakers and people like that. So I'm just like, that is just it's just very nice. It feels really nice. It's a good feeling to know that there's that support out there for the film. And I think one of the one of the I don't know, the fans are making all these video edits of the characters from the movie, which I love seeing, and those are so fun. And there's this like Oscars for Art campaign on Twitter, which is amazing.
Yep.
So just the support there from the fans is really, really nice and really special. And I feel very grateful to be a part of something that has that support from a wider range of people.
And I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure you've probably gotten a number or seen a number of different of the like edits on like Instagram and
Yeah,
TikTok and stuff like that involving
yeah,
like their character. So that must, that's always like cool to see that your character connected with an audience, in that way.
yeah. And they're so good too. They're fun. They're like
Yeah.
all the edits, they're so cool. Yeah.
Now, for you, so for the main, three characters, Allie, Sienna, and Brooke, definitely gave me some like Lori, Annie, and Linda Halloween vibes.
Yeah.
What was it like working with them? And do you have any like fun stories from you guys working on set at all?
Um, yeah, I mean, it was, I'm just like, it was all really fun. I'm trying to remember the school scene. I was actually sick when we were filming the school scenes. So we actually had to ADR like most of that scene because I had a cold. Or I didn't actually have a cold. I just had laryngitis, so I couldn't talk properly. So hopefully no one, I like shouldn't, I'm like, I shouldn't admit that, but hopefully nobody notices the ADR in the movie.
I did
But
not notice that at all. So
that's what we wanted. That was my goal because I felt so bad that that happened. Um, but but those days were fun because those were the days that Lauren and Kaylee and I got to really meet each other and bond and hang out, as new friends and old friends in the movie. But the Halloween store was really fun. I feel like that was just a really um, fun time to film that in general. Just because like a lot of those things that Dave does, like with the glasses, a lot of that was just improvised, of course. Like there are a few things that like he was just able to like play in that setting. That setting was so perfect. That location was so perfect, abracadabra, and that in Manhattan. But it was so that was a lot of fun too. I'm trying to think of just like crazy stories because I
I
feel
can
like it's been so long that I feel like the craziest stories are things that happened. I mean, one thing that happened during Allie's kill scene was that when he was pouring the bleach in the first take, it went directly in my mouth, and then I like spit it out, and that just kept screaming. Like I spit it back at him like a fountain.
jeez.
And I really want to see that take. I don't know if they still have it, but
I say that would be
but we just like all died laughing after that because I was just like this dying girl fountain all of a sudden. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, but there was a lot of like joking around, dancing on set, listening to music and dancing and just like being weird and people like, you know, just I don't know, pranking each other. But it was just a lot of fun.
Just a lot of
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, with David, I mean, I can see that, that's cool that he improvised a lot of that stuff, but I could see that like now going, this being the second film, well, actually, he's played the character multiple times, so just like having a better feel for the character, just being able to kind of do stuff more like on a whim, where it's like if you're first time playing a character, you're maybe kind of like feeling that out. So
Mhm.
that like makes sense. So there was a lot of improvisation from him then, from like as Art the Clown.
Yeah, I think Damien let him play with it a bit. Damien lets there are certain moments where Damien would let us be a bit free with things. So yeah, I'm trying to remember too if any of the trick-or-treating scene. I don't think we really improvised a lot, but I think like David and I were able to play off of each other and do a few takes a few different ways for
Yeah.
the trick-or-treating scene. So that was fun to work on as well. Um,
Yeah, because
yeah,
you never know what might come out of, doing those like, those couple different like takes. You might get something in there that it's like wasn't written on the page, but it just like you
right.
guys have that chemistry and it ends up
Yeah,
working out.
yeah.
So do you like, because we talked about you hadn't seen like the original film like initially, do you consider yourself like a horror fan like overall, or are you still like pretty new to the genre?
I do consider myself a horror fan. I would consider myself someone who enjoys watching horror movies, but I really think I was more so introduced to more of the horror movies that had made it more mainstream, rather than all of the indie films that are out there that are so great. Um, and so I'm being more introduced to those films now, which I'm excited by. But yeah, I've have always liked watching horror films, and the main reason I think is because I like being thrilled. Like, I love roller coasters and like being like scared and haunted houses and challenging the haunted houses and the horror films to scare me.
Yep.
So
So
Yeah.
I guess for you then, is there like how do you have like what are some I guess like some of your favorite horror films and is was there have you run across any horror films that have actually legitly scared you?
Um, one of my favorites, I always say, is The Others. I really love ghost stories, and
That's a
paranormal
good one.
stuff. Yeah, so I really liked that movie and the twist in that movie, but I feel like honestly, I think two movies that did freak I did find freaky. I do think I found Hereditary to be a bit freaky. And The Grudge. And yeah, The Grudge. I watched that when I was young, like I think I was like 11 or 12 probably.
Yep.
So I do like the Grudge movies, but that I think was pretty scary.
Yeah,
Um,
that was a big deal when it came out. I remember seeing that like in the theaters and a lot of
yeah,
people were scared of that.
yeah. Um, so yeah, there's that. Yeah, there's something about Hereditary too. There's something, yeah, I don't know, but I'm not the type of person though who watches a horror film and then has nightmares. Luckily, thank goodness. So for whatever reason,
That's that's good.
so yeah, I
I
don't
think
know.
at some point you kind of like once you do start to watch a good amount of them though, I think you kind of start to desensitize yourself like a little bit after seeing so
Maybe.
many. So it gets a little bit harder to there is still some that like creep me out. I know for me, like even now, like and I've seen it multiple times, but like as a kid, I saw fairly young, I should say, I saw Pet Cemetery, the original film. And
Hmm.
like and I think as I mean, as a kid, like something about like the dead animals, like that's just like always kind of like creeped me out for some reason. But then
Yeah,
as like adult, it also like scares me like in a different way. So, but
right,
it's one of my favorite films. But that's like a movie that still kind of like creeps me out, today.
for sure. Yeah, that's a creepy one for sure. I would agree with that.
Now, as far as just like the working on this film, like overall, what's going to be the biggest thing that you're taking away from this experience of working on Terrifier 2?
Yeah, I think, for me, I think the biggest takeaway is I I don't know. I feel like I'm just glad that I sort of had the opportunity to venture into a genre like this and had the opportunity to do to play a role like this because I I mean, for a long time, I'm a very reserved, soft-spoken person. So I feel like whenever a director trusts me with an emotionally intense role, that's always a gift for me because I don't always think that other people see me in that way. And so when someone does trust you and see that you can do that, that is a huge gift as an actor. So I'm grateful for Damien for including me in this film, honestly, and trusting that I could do that and go there because I do know that I know that I can do it, but I don't present myself in that way where I'm not an aggressive person or it's like people are always like, I don't know, can you do this? And it's always a gift when when you meet a director who trusts you to go there and trust that you can
Yeah,
without even, really seeing it before,
yeah,
because
just
they
having
never
that.
really got to see me do that unless, I mean, I did the audition, but that's not the full scene.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah,
So
I
yeah,
can imagine. Yeah, as an actor, it must be nice to know that you have that trust there with the director. It just makes things. I feel like it must make things just like flow and just like work like a lot easier when you do have that there with that person.
yeah, I think so. And Damien's been such a supportive person. He's so humble and so supportive throughout this whole process for everyone involved. And yeah, it is really nice to have that because I mean, you were cast for a reason. You do deserve to be there. You
Yep.
can do this. So it's one of those things, and getting past any sort of imposter syndrome you might have. But I mean, as long as you trust yourself, then I think you know that you'll be okay.
Yeah, and I think that's some great advice too for any up and coming actors that maybe watching this video like afterwards. Definitely take note of that for sure. So I got it to wrap things up, Casey. What is next for Casey Hartnett, and where can fans follow you at as far as like social media and stuff like that goes?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do have a Facebook page and an Instagram account. It's my name, Casey Hartnett, in both places, so not too hard to find. Um, I am currently in some writing and producing stages with a couple projects, so we'll see where those go. And I will be filming something in the next couple months. I have no idea if if I'm supposed to talk about it or not, but it is a film, and we'll see
Yeah,
what
so
happens. And it's a different role than most anyone I think has seen me in so far. So
well,
that will be
that's exciting. Yeah, no, and obviously, yeah, you don't have to name like the project or anything like that. Don't want to get you in trouble, but hey, I mean, really excited for you. Excited to check that out. Whether it's
yeah.
writing or upcoming like roles that you have. After seeing you in this film, first time coming across your work. So I'm definitely going to be on the lookout for any of like your future projects coming out. And for anyone watching this as well, I'll make sure to link like your profiles down below in the description, so that way they can find you on social media as well. But again, Casey, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. Again, I know things have kind of been like crazy the past couple months for you, so I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule, coming on here and just talking all things about the film and all that nerdy kind of stuff. I love that kind of stuff. So thank you again.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me. This has been great. Hi, I'm Casey Hartnett. I play Allie in Terrifier 2, and you're watching Pop Culture with Pat.